whether we have children or not, we all have been parented. And I think that's the beautiful beast. It's like we know the potential that lives within that, but there's also much that we have to look at that is sobering, that is really, it brings a lot up. And you and I, before we started recording, briefly chatted about the body and, the Well Systems body of work really is about recognizing the body as the instrument of perception, but the body as the instrument of processing. And I think for so long, our intellects and our critical thinking and our capacity for thought, and not to diminish it, but it's not going to take us. It's not our gateway. And I think more of us are feeling that than ever before. Even some of the most brilliant minds that I'm reading right now are really willing to say, we have to not know right now. The power, I believe, is in what we don't know we don't know. Yeah. And to really, really shake up what we're so sure of. I had a really incredible exchange with a woman the other day, and one of the lines was, trusting that how we were raised was right is perhaps one of the most dangerous things for moving forward.
I'm Dean Walker, and welcome to the Poetry of Predicament podcast, a podcast for people brave enough to face humanity's challenges and problems, and most importantly, our numerous predicaments. The Poetry of Predicament is a podcast meant to inspire us to bring forth grace, beauty, and connection with the web of life in the face of a predicament-laden world. Back for a second interview here on the Poetry of Predicament podcast, and also on the Take My Hand, Conscious Parenting in a Time of Stolen Dreams special focus podcast. Naomi Irons is now joining the team to produce at a whole new level the curated content of this conscious parenting program. All right. Welcome back to another episode of the Poetry of Predicament podcast. It is really close to the end of March, which seems like it's been an endless month for me. My experience of the worldwide coronavirus 24/7 coverage of this extraordinary pandemic just seems to have been just consuming my attention, and certainly the vast majority of attention on the planet. I want to get away from that for a while in this episode of the podcast, and I'm really pleased to be speaking with one of the first people that I got to interview for both the Poetry of Predicament and for a special secondary podcast, special focused podcast series that involves a number of curated interviews and special content about conscious parenting in these times, and particularly conscious parenting of those who could be called collapse aware, people who are conscious of the human caused collapse of Earth and human systems that we are in fact in spades, as a matter of fact, in this coronavirus time. We are watching the collapse of certainly human systems in this moment, in addition to the many Earth systems that are continuing to be in their downward slide and collapse as we speak. So Naomi Irons, you really were a jaw-dropping interview for me. It was it was in that first interview that you are one of a number of women who are in a lineage of advanced practices and training that in a body of work called Well Systems. And we've had a number of practitioners and senior students and so on from that lineage in the Poetry of Predicament interviews. At 2019, many. Yours in particular struck me by how you shared what you shared about your life with your children in Hawaii. And there's a particular story that you told about an incident a couple of years ago, that there was this mistaken emergency broadcast message across the entire Hawaiian Islands chain that there was some sort of nuclear bombs were on their way. I don't remember exactly how you said it, but I remember vividly hearing about it after the fact here on the mainland. And your particular story about that, amongst others in that interview and in subsequent many conversations, took my breath away. You know, you have a way of embodying this body of work. It's an extraordinary body of work. And I've heard that from every one of the women I've had the pleasure of interviewing. But yours was particularly moving for me. And so I'm not going to repeat that right now. I just want you to know, I want to recap that to just remind myself of that special time in that interview and remember that presence that is always present when I'm speaking with you. So I'm so pleased to be talking with you today. And I'm wanting to let people know a little bit about what you and I have been talking about recently. I'm very, very excited about it. The past couple of years, I've been putting together a website and a body of work, a number of online video learning series about the transformational side, the human development side of what it is to face human-caused collapse. And you have recently let me know that you would like to engage with, be a part of the creation of, and part of the curation of the interview, you know, making the interviews happen and bringing whatever other writings or elements you want to bring to this program called Take My Hand, Conscious Parenting in a Time of Stolen Dreams. And so I won't lie, I'm stoked. I'm so excited that you're bringing what you bring to whatever you want to do in that particular chapter of this body of work. And so this is an exceptional year. I'm really taking the gloves off this year. I am not worried about being diplomatic. I'm not worried about trying to make the right, presentation for everybody, because this work is not for everybody. I wish it was. I flat out wish it was. But what we've got is a world full of other distractions and other ways of expressing yourself and levels of life to be lived. So we'll interact with who we do in this work. I'm very, very pleased to have you and your passion and your creativity coming on board. The last thing I want to say, thank you so much for sitting through all this. I really appreciate it. The last thing I want to say is that I'm blown away by what we're in right now. We're in a pause that the power and the beauty of Greta Thunberg didn't stand a chance against the business as usual wall. She threw herself beautifully against that wall, and I'm sorry to say, it changed nothing. It's inspiring as hell for me and many others, but in my judgment, it changed nothing. And then there's Extinction Rebellion and many other activist groups, and there are a number of expressions that it's not fair. I can't, and articulate them all right now, but It's not that we haven't done anything, but the machine that normalizes the trauma and the predatory capitalist system that is just decimating our planet and our lives is destined to normalize itself and normalize any expression like Greta, like XR, any of the others into this pablum. They're already forgotten. There's news cycles ago, and who cares?
Mm.
But this pause caused by the coronavirus. Here we are in the end of March in 2020, and I'm wary enough to not get all I call it my naive self, my naive part, to get all excited. Like, well, this is our opportunity to really gather up and use this opportunity to transform the world. I know, but it's in here. It's in here. However, energetically and psychospiritually, and as we'll talk about today, in my body, I register this as an extraordinary time. So there's kind of my typical gravitas. I'm known for bringing maybe more than my share of gravitas to a conversation, but there is a possibility in the space that I'm feeling, and I'm feeling an extraordinary synergy that is available now, and also an openness. There's a softness to the collective heart that has been desperately missing for me for years in the USA in particular. And there's a bit of that softness coming through. So thank you again for sitting through all this talk and all this lead up. I'm so thrilled to have you here. And I would love it if you would share a bit of what has you wanting to step in and create and collaborate and offer what you offer, and take this in a direction that you are interested in going. Yeah, please share with us, if you will, what's alive for you now as you look into this window that's wide open.
Thank you. Thank you first for all of that. You know, what I recall when we had our podcast, what feels like a million years ago now. And your introduction was really about being on the precipice. And I think what's so incredible is, as I look back, you know, we were both on the precipice in our own way, and really committing to what so many have been long talking about, this new paradigm. And when we take all the, you know, the fluff off around it, it really, really is a beautiful beast of a conversation. And you know, when I approached you about, you know, it really is time, I'm ready to share, and I'm ready to be a part of this much larger conversation about parenting and about conscious parenting. It really is coming from a space inside of me that is not looking to be an expert in anything, rather looking to be a part of an evolution, and to be the, you know, this leader self in an evolution with myself and with others who are committed to that inside themselves. And really, you know, the moment that I said yes to that, I think that's the power. The moment that we commit, so much happens. And we were all, you know, going full steam ahead, a culture of just business as usual. And I got tired a number of years ago of having the same conversation over and over again. And I really feel like this time is different. This is this pause. And there is almost like this bifurcation that I was speaking to a few people about the other day that really is about a very mindful choice. And there's a window right now. And this window is really, really important. And as I tucked my daughter into bed last night, Dean, she wanted me to lay with her. And, she just turned 13. And normally, we'll chat, but I'll leave her room. But she asked me last night, she said, will you lay with me? And we began having this conversation, and tears started to come down her cheeks. And she said, I don't want the machine to start again. And this isn't language that I would usually talk to my daughter in. So where this came from for her really lets me know that this whole notion of collective consciousness, this whole notion of, what we're talking about, it's been time for a long time, but now we have the privilege of being in this time. And in that moment, all I could do was let her know that I heard her and that I shared the same feeling. But I didn't try to quickly divert it or to make it all better. I think this is a sobering time right now. I think this is the time that if we want to look at our parenting and we want to look at our children in a real honest way, we also have to look at the process that shaped us. The process of our own parenting, the truth that we carry about what it was to be parented. Whether we have children or not, we all have been parented. And I think that's the beautiful beast. It's like we know the potential that lives within that, but there's also much that we have to look at that is sobering, that is really, it brings a lot up. And you and I, before we started recording, briefly chatted about the body and, the well systems body of work really is about recognizing the body as the instrument of perception, but the body as the instrument of processing. And I think for so long, our intellects and our critical thinking and our capacity for thought, and not to diminish it, but it's not going to take us. It's not our gateway. And I think more of us are feeling that than ever before. Even some of the most brilliant minds that I'm reading right now are really willing to say, we have to not know right now. The power, I believe, is in what we don't know we don't know. Yeah. And to really, really shake up what we're so sure of. I had a really incredible exchange with a woman the other day, and one of the lines was, trusting that how we were raised was right is perhaps one of the most dangerous things for moving forward. That blind trust in everything that has created this culture that is now crumbling before our eyes, that it is the right way, it is the only way. So I share all of that, Dean, because I really do believe that we are coming to this bifurcation where there is, and I'm hesitant to say it, but I'm going to say it. It's kind of an all or nothing. It's like you have the trapeze, and in order to grab the next rung, we have to let go of the rung we were just holding on to. Hmm. And there's a lot of power in that. And that in relation to the parenting conversation is huge.
Yeah. It's hard it's hard to overstate how excited I am about having this small team of people that are associated one way or another with this stuff that we do here in the Living Resilience place. What you were just saying about parenting being at the center, at the core of who we've become.
Yes.
You know, it's really what it is, the light of the projector that is going, you know, beaming through us. This is what brought us here. And I love what you said about it. It's time for us to really look soberly, clearly at what are the influences from my having been raised the way I was raised. And when I look out at our collective expression in the world, I'm particularly looking at the USA because we are as high contrast and pugnaciously visible an example as you could ever want. You know, we are led by the shadow. We are led by the darkest elements of our collective beingness, and we definitely have some introspection to do. And the kind of look and the kind of framing that you're suggesting is part of that important introspection. And the only way I know to do that when it gets down to people, just folks, is we need to be able to reference, so where do I go? If I'm interested, if I get a sense of there's something in what Naomi's sharing, there's something in the way she's saying it that is compelling to me. I'm hearing it, but I'm not quite sure. So what will I do differently? How will I be differently? How will I see the world differently? How will I process the world differently? And I'm very thankful for the many conversations I've had and being able to do a couple of rounds of the very basic level exposure to the work that you all are in. I'm wondering if you're willing to say a little bit about how are you different? What did you experience, and what do you experience now in your practices that are different, that yield a different way of being in life, that life shows up differently? Because we're in some deep trouble here. You know, I really love what you said. It's a make or break time.
It really is. Yeah. And I think the unconsciousness, or what lives in our daily life out of our awareness, the things that are kind of like driving the bus behind the scenes, and really starting to look at that, and starting to look at what we are as human beings, right? Look at who we are. We can look at who we are within the context of an old paradigm, but to really look at ourselves in what we're calling, a very different way of being, to look at what we are, that our bodies are these devices of, I'll go as far to say quantum devices, that our experiences are processed through. And so we have multiple things going on at the same time. And so to really have our awareness, especially in this pause where we're not talking about who's taking the kids to soccer and, who's doing this, like there's this slowness right now, that we can really sit back in ourselves and begin to notice. So even for me at this time, it's another deeper layer, a deeper level of awareness of myself. And my children, really have been brought up very, very differently. So when I hear oh, well, that's just the teenage years, I I don't share that same sentiment, because it really is, we've all been parented, and then we parent our children as we become aware, of who we are being with them. That's when I think really the rubber hits the road, and we start to see, and we start to have this perception of how we see our children. And I think that has been a key for me in how I see my children, that they're not these vessels to be filled, that they're not to be filled with all of this information and regurgitating. They're these lights. They are these incredible, unique lights in this world,
Mm-hmm.
that as I engage them as that, we have a very, very different experience than if I engage them way down at the behavior level that they're operating from.
Mm-hmm.
And that, so much of our world, we have messages. There's messages that are happening inside of us, outside of us. They're all cues and metaphors for that'll help me in my parenting. And really, parenting is a state of being. It's like we were talking about, it's not this static, stagnant parenting for an outcome.
Mm-hmm.
What you and I are talking about is parenting and letting go of the outcome, and letting evolution be a part of this exploration. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. There was something that you were sharing. One thing that I picked up in my experience of, again, this kind of basic level exposure to the work, the well systems work, is the way I see the world is we've normalized an extraordinary trauma delivery system in our world. That's my experience of it. When I'm in that world and I'm looking through a slightly more awake, but still engaged in the usual way, looking at the world. An example of that is we have a president and a Republican administration in the USA that has been responding to the coronavirus for the USA in a way that will clearly cause tens of thousands, if not far more than that, of people to die that did not have to die. And we've normalized it in our collective presence and in our collective way of being with each other, the way we talk about it on the news, the way we talk about it amongst each other. There is not the outrage of that this is deplorable behavior and this up with this I shall not put, and the kind of raw, if we were parents, or like the mother lion is the energy that I often think of. Like, the mother lion isn't angry. The mother lion is deeply, spontaneously, authentically fierce, with the power of life pulsing through her. And so she will slash that which is attacking her cub. We don't have that. We've lost our connection. We've disconnected from our own deeper selves and from each other. So we don't have that kind of fierceness that would naturally come up when somebody who's allegedly leading us is deliberately causing the death of tens of thousands of our own next door neighbors. And so I know that that's a big, and I'm sorry to take that to such a dark place. I apologize, but that's just what's literally going on right now. And as I look at it at the culture level, we have all of us collectively disconnected from our deeper selves and from each other, from earth and from soul, is the way I lay it out. And what I understand about well systems work is that there's an orientation to reconnect. And that reconnection is called being internally referent, looking within our body for our experience, inviting the waves of what the body has to tell us and has to guide us and has to emanate within us, as opposed to that fully externally referent system, which has us normalize the kind of behavior I was just describing.
Mm-hmm.
We call that normal and we don't talk about it. It's just the next news cycle and what's next. So I hope that's a pretty graphic and bold example from my experience. Again, I feel badly bringing the scale of what's actually occurring to our world to this delicate conversation, but I can't imagine something more important and potent as an example. So thank you for your patience. And I'm wondering if that sparks you to say anything.
Absolutely. And I think what you just shared is so important, because it's that beautiful beast. It's that dark, delicate. It is that fierce and soft. I think that is those inner experiences that live inside of us that often are one or the other. And I think what we're talking about is inviting that to be held at the same time, so that inner experience, my children are not something that I have to do something to. My children are an invitation for me in my inner state, and for me to first recognize that, own that, and be able to share that in a way that doesn't attack and doesn't come at. It invites expansion, right? I think in the huge collapse that is happening, and really, Dean, I know I shared this with you before, but as a child, and I think this is going to tie in somehow. As a child, I knew something was coming in my lifetime. I intuitively carried this knowing, and it's like I've arrived at this time, and it matches and maps to the knowing that I carry. And I think so many of our children on the planet right now carry this, and they carry something beyond this. In fact, they are the leaders of this new paradigm, of this new way of being. And in so many ways, excuse me, as a parent, part of my move to Hawaii, part of taking my children out of the organized school system, is so that they could hear themselves, so that they could have the space without being told what to think, that they could come naturally and organically to a rhythm that is them, and a rhythm that sources them and brings life for them in this world. And what I'm recognizing in my family is that as we are all that, there is something so much greater happening. So the fierceness that you speak about, it is at the surface of my being right now. It is really, you cannot have my children. My children are not a pawn in this collapse, machine-driven world. And I don't feel frantic about it either. I don't feel panicked. I feel very, very strong and solid in my knowing. And I think that's why I know there are others who carry that, who that discovery, it really is the power of permission. That we each are to ourselves and to each other. The permission to know what we know, the permission to remember who we are, the permission to raise our children in the face of collapse in thriving ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the joy that I bring, and that is the time is now that I bring to this conversation, because it's the ability to see it all, and it's the ability to not turn away. Mm-hmm. And to have the capacity to be in the delicacy and the fierceness of truth as it moves through our being. Even on this call, I'm aware of the different truths that are emerging, that because I can own them for what they are, they can move. I don't have to stay holding on and stuck to a particular sense. It's like, this is the evolution. I think we're in a conversation that if you can listen beyond the content for it, you can feel the evolution of what is possible as we commit to ourselves and our own truth, and we share that, and then that elicits another response.
You and I talked also before we started recording about the extraordinary opportunity that this particular time seems to be offering us. Uh, I like to call it the pause. And it's in my experience, what the coronavirus has brought to us around the world, and particularly in the USA, is something that Greta Thunberg and Extinction Rebellion and all the other incredible activist groups that have been particularly focusing in these past couple of years, as gorgeous as they all were and are, I have to say, I don't think they moved the dial an inch. I just don't think much really shifted. And now this coronavirus has stopped us, has at least slowed us down considerably in terms of the business as usual human operating system around the world. And this pause, I just get a sense that this is an immense opportunity, a window of opportunity to start to explore, if not this ecocidal human business as usual human operating system, then what? It's just a toe in the door to be able to consider, if not this way of being that is certainly killing off humanity eventually, and many, many of our more than human fellow earthlings. If not that, then what? And I consider this conversation to be about then what? It's not the answer. There is no the answer, but it is an extraordinary possibility amongst hopefully many. I got to tell you though, I look long and hard. This is the work that I'm in. And there's not a lot of conversation for this caliber of possibility. I'm doing my best to bring together this kind of work at this kind of level. And there are a few particular bodies of work that have made it and are in the toolkit, if you will, to be offered out to people who are interested in doing this work. I'm curious if my mentioning about this being an important and possibly even transformational time of pause, if that sparks anything in you.
Yeah, it does, because what I think of immediately is the pause brings us into the now. And there's no more potent place to question and to really look honestly at. So as we're slowed down, and as we can bring ourselves into this moment in time, I think it allows a huge gateway. And from other conversations that I've been having, what I'm noticing is there's a lot of confusion that comes with it, because the business as usual world, the culture that we have been indoctrinated into, has a very static, almost still like state without breath.
Yes.
So even in this conversation, if we just pause to take a breath, if we invite everyone listening to just stop and soften your belly, relax your shoulders, and breathe. You know, it's something so simple. I think that we've really complicated so much of life, and the simplicity of this pause is the invitation to be in the now. And in the now, to then be able to look a little bit deeper into the past, into what has shaped, to start to question, what are the beliefs that I'm carrying that were passed to me that I don't even know I'm carrying, and they no longer hold meaning to move forward. Because my sense about it, and this is just an intuition, we can't take forward, you know, because there is no path forward, this bifurcation is happening. There are things that we need to leave behind. There are states of being, and not even leave behind, but integrate into our experience of ourselves. And I think that's what you so beautifully are talking about. It's like that internal referencing, that bringing it back inside, that all of the push out here to make things change isn't changing at the rate that we know is possible. And there's so many of us that know that it's possible. And so in this now, in this pause, to be able to look and to really get honest that what has shaped our culture hasn't been all of the things that, you know, that we've been talking about out there. Mm-hmm. It's been the force of our parenting practices have shaped our culture. Like you said, it's the light that's coming, and I don't even know if that's the right language for me. It's what's pushing us forward, and we're all stopping and going, is that how I want to continue? Mm-hmm. And beyond that, I think this is what's important, that we can look beyond as well, but stay where we are, is to look and see the potential, to see the emergence, to see the great collective shift that can happen. But it can only happen if it happens in here first. If it happens in the very truth that I carry in this moment, and my willingness to allow that to move through tissue. And we're so good at just a little deke, you know, I can know now, like, it's the subtlety of like, just a slight movement, like, oh, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to go there. And just Deb Gleason said it so beautifully in her podcast around, it's just a few breaths. We've been taught that we're going to be stuck there forever. It's a few breaths. Yeah. It is, because we are forces of nature. Nature is not going quietly into the night, and nor are we supposed to. Yeah. Right? I think that is the fierceness. So I see it in three parts. I see it as the pause, the invitation for the now, the breath that connects me to myself, the breath that connects me to all that is. Then the ability and the willingness and the commitment to look at what has shaped me, and not just from an intellectual point, but what is the truth of my experience of being parented. It's a very, very different way to look at how we were shaped. What is the truth of my experience of being parented? And guaranteed, that's going to move stuff in the body. And what I love about this time, Dean, everything's already moving. there are so many sensations and, all the things that we have tried to distract ourselves from, that we can't. We are in a stop phase, to look, to feel, to touch, to be, to soften into. It used to be a much harsher experience inside of me, but the invitation for large amounts of information that are really full of life can move so softly when there's openness.
Yeah. If I may, I'd like to just recap what I started with, which an immense introduction of you and the work and the website and everything else. Just a little bit of a recap what we're talking about. We're talking about a body of work that you've been involved with for quite some time, and I've been recently introduced to experientially and through a number of conversations here in the podcast of Poetry of Predicament, and also in a secondary podcast, a special focused series called Take My Hand, Conscious Parenting in a Time of Stolen Dreams, and where that can be found. I post probably a half or less of those parenting, and actually a number of interviews with the children as well. Excuse me, I post a few of them here in the Poetry of Predicament. And where the rest go is on the website, livingresilience.net, and on the programs page, which is called Deep Academy. One of the offerings, as you scroll down the page, there's actually quite a bit to look through. We've got a lot of stuff going on. Got a upcoming series, live series in April, and we've got a number of Deep Academy offerings that are online learning series as well. Amidst all that, you'll find the Take My Hand, Conscious Parenting in a Time of Stolen Dreams offering. And that, like every one of those other offerings, is you'll find an option. If you were to sign up for it, you'll find an option as you go through the layers of the registration process. It's fairly simple. When you get to the page where it says, well, this is the recommended amount to pay for this course, what you will have seen a number of times as you've read about any course that you're interested in is that this, as with all offerings, is offered in the spirit of a gift economy. Meaning if you have the resources and the willingness, we invite you to pay the recommended amount, or even more if you've got more to offer. And there are a number of options to pay less, as it might reflect your ability to and your willingness to pay for the course, all the way down to paying zero for the course. You are welcome to click that button and move through, register, and dive in. Dive into what Naomi's been talking about. Those particular interviews, again, with collapse-aware parents. The ones that have truly changed me have been the interviews with the children in these conversations. The amount of resources and different ways of being, different ways of framing the world, different ways of approaching parenting and our troubled world are truly extraordinary. And this is no single dimension is overemphasized, meaning there are a lot of folks that have been interviewed that are struggling. They're really having a hard time because this world is damn hard when it is. And they are generous enough to share what their life is like and how they keep their hearts open and how they do their best at parenting in a world that is demanding everything of them out in the work world and so on. So we are doing our best to have this be a broad spectrum, a wide array of sharing from collapse aware parents and children. And I'm really excited about your participation, Naomi, in this, because you do have extraordinary experience of this, what I would call advanced practices, a very advanced level of personal development work that you've been describing. And you've got um, a huge amount of experience in parenthood.
Mm.
And so we've got this growing, very alive alliance of extraordinary people offering what's right for them to be offering at this time. I hope that this is speaking to some of the folks, hopefully all the folks that are watching this particular interview. I think it is very much my experience that one of the callings of this time is for us to find our people, find people with whom we resonate, people with whom we feel the dignity and the deep respect and the fierceness, and we feel welcomed to have the full range of our feelings and the full range of those waves that are often talked about, inviting the waves of authentic living. That's an extraordinary tribe or support group or whatever, family, whatever people would like to call it. I know that's real different than anything I could have called my family early on. I'm excited about how this is growing. I'm excited, very much excited about the possibility that this collaboration, these many collaborations going on in this body of work, are hopefully going to be offering elements that will be vitally useful and enlivening for the people who are watching this and coming on in to join us. So there it is. I've said a bunch of other stuff. Mm-hmm. Does it spark you to say anything to kind of wrap up your experience here today?
Well, I think the invitation, the welcoming is such a huge piece. And take my hand. I really have loved that terminology that you came up with, because it really is, doesn't matter at what stage we are in our own evolution and our parenting. It's like sometimes we just need to reach out and know that somebody else is there, and that the power of being witnessed, the power of, not just keeping this ruminating inside of ourselves, that, sometimes in our greatest challenges and in our greatest, when we feel like we've just come right to an edge, it really is about recognizing it's time to take flight. It's time for, us to really let go in ways that we do intuitively know, and to reach out, and to also, for me, to reach out my hand as well, because really it's a circle. It isn't any kind of hierarchy. Like I will never stop evolving and discovering and welcoming myself into new ways of being. And it's just a lot of fun when we're with each other, right? It is, that is the comfort a lot of times, is just to be able to speak from the depth of who we know ourselves to be in that moment, and to be heard, not for advice and not for fixing. And I think that's the power of the well systems process, is that it's for you to become your own guru. There is no guru. there is, of course, my journey through it, but it's my ability to point and to say, there is a process. There is a process that you can engage for yourself where you become more of you. And I think I'll leave it there, because I'm really excited to launch into interviews and into the creation of others sharing as well, and to expand this in ways that I know I don't even know are possible right now, but I can feel it. And I think that's always the excitement for me.
Right on. Naomi Irons, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and particularly now with your new level of engagement with this particular part of the work. It's an exciting time. It's such a vibrantly alive time. You know, sometimes I feel a little odd to be so engaged and so fulfilled in my work and my relationships within that work and so on right now, in a time when there's so much tragedy and so much fear and so on. There are so many other elements that are absolutely demanding of so many of us in the world. I am deeply thankful for this conversation. I'm going to be putting all the links to all the things that we've been talking about today in the show notes, and I'll look forward to our next chance to get together. And before you know it, you will be the person sitting in the host chair here in the Poetry Predicament and or in Take My Hand. And we will, my guess is that we will have a number of different hosts for these various types of interviews as things expand here. So thank you so much for bringing yourself here today and to the work. And I look forward to our next time.
Thank you very much, Dean. I look forward to all that is to come.
Thanks for watching another episode of the Poetry of Predicament podcast, produced by Dean Walker and the Living Resilience Alliance, www.livingresilience.net. Also available on our website, www.livingresilience.net, is a wide array of articles, online learning series, arranging group and individual resilience coaching, and sign up for our every other Tuesday free support group that we call Safe Circle Calls.